Hello, welcome back. Our newsmaker interview this week on Elsinore.News is a return of the Historical Society. Today we have Jeanie Corral, a member of the Lake Elsinore Historical Society, and an amazing person. She has written many books on the history of Lake Elsinore, and today she's brought some of her books with us, and she's going to share with us some of the stories from some of the books and let you know how you can learn more about the Historical Society and the history of Lake Elsinore. Jeanie Corral, thanks and welcome back.
You're welcome, Dan.
Now, you brought 3 books with you, but those are not the only 3 that you've written?
No.
What kind of writer are you?
Well, that's debatable, of course. Mainly I've written history, but I've written one child's storybook. I have a couple others that are just fun stories that I've done in headbound. Mostly the ones that I brought are the history of the Catholic Church, St. Francis of Rome, which just this last week celebrated 130 years.
Wow.
I wrote the centennial history of it in 1987 when I was the centennial chairman. The other is the history of Elsinore High School from 1891 to 1991. And I wrote that because Elsinore High was a unique place, and at the time when we came here, that was when covered wagons still ran and God was a boy. I got tired of listening to people talk about Elsinore High as a place where there was not a great stress on academic learning, and it wasn't true. And I was working at the newspapers during that particular time, had access to the morgue, so I spent a lot of time looking at all of the morgues and collecting information. When I actually wrote the church history first, I got a glimpse of what divine inspiration was about. I spent 5 years researching the church history, and when I went to write it, it took me 2 weeks exactly. I sat at a computer and rattled it off from sometimes 3 in the morning till midnight at night.
Wow.
And did it every day. And by the time I was done, I said, this isn't so bad. I better start on the school. And that took more than 10 years to complete.
Wow.
And if I hadn't done the church history first, I would have never done the school history. But once I got it completed, I self-published it and gave several books to the library at the school, to the local library as well. And because I had been working as a journalist for the Sun Tribune and also for other area newspapers over the years, I went out and did books like the other one that I brought, which is My Life, My Family, My Home, My Elsinore, which was Fred Dominguez's book, where I sat down with him and he dictated what he wanted about his life, and I wrote it, cleaned up the editing, and we set it in format, and he printed his own book.
Wow, so he printed his own book for his family?
Yeah, for his family.
Wow.
Because a lot of oral histories, especially in our community, have gone unremembered and unrecorded. And the good thing about a small town like Elsinore is if you do have a newspaper or someone that knows things that have happened firsthand, it's great when you sit down and do in-depth interviews that are printed up and you can go back to. Like John Searle, for instance, the world-class artist. He lived in Lake Elsinore right off of Scrivener Street and did his best work here. He worked in the movies, of course, with Clark Gable, was in Lust for Life, an incredible outside artist, or outsider artist, I guess, paintings in the Smithsonian. And when he died, the collection of paintings that he had mysteriously vanished into the recesses of several private hands and homes, but his work was and still is considered really terrific for a man who started painting, I believe, in his late 60s, early 70s, kind of like Grandma Moses, only much more avant-garde. But we've had lots of people in the community who have done wonderful things. Our schools, all of them now are part of Lake Elsinore Unified, are outstanding schools with great teaching staff, great students, and each school is unique. And so I just happened to be around for when centennials of the city occurred, when it was a centennial for Elsinore High and also for the church. So I did it for the Women's Club as well. And my tagline always has been, I've been here since God was a boy. And I'm sure most everybody who's heard me at city council meetings, if I'm there for something, knows the line well even before I say it. But it's really true, because when we came here, gas was 25 cents a gallon. There was not a single stoplight anywhere in town, not even a stop sign in town. And if you called anybody on the phone, you might not know them, but they knew someone you know, and you talked to them anyway. And in the time that we were here, our phone number, in the 54 years that we've been in the valley, has never changed. It's always been the same number, different area codes, same number. And at one time it was the same number as, or it was almost the same number as Knights Printing and Skylark Field. And so when I would get phone calls for the airport, I would say, no, you don't want the number you've called, you want this number, 674-4248, or you want Knight Printing, which is 674-4222. And so you grew up with a small town surrounding you, where everyone knew everybody, and everybody cared about one another's kids, and knew what the kids were doing, where they went to school, and what they were doing. So that's what I write about when I write. I write about things that I know, people that I care about, and a community that I consider my hometown.
Now, these books that you've written, are they available at, you said, at the library? Can people buy them on Amazon or independent booksellers?
I guess you can get them somewhere. I have a few copies left of some of them, but like Fred's book, or the book I did for Jerry Oldenkamp, who is your neighbor up in Tuscany Hills, those books were done exclusively for family histories, so that families and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and nieces and nephews had that kind of information.
Well, when you were doing these histories, did you tape record the oral stories and then transcribe it? Do you have a specific process for these two biographies that you did for Jerry Oldenkamp and Fred Dominguez?
I sat down and hand wrote all that they had to say to me. I have recorded Frank DiPasquale, former mayor. I have a long recording of Ruth Barnett, the late wife of the Barnett Adobes from Temecula. Ruth Sutherland Barnett was her name. I have another one of Tom Hudson that I need to transcribe, because Tom and I were good friends. Tom was the editor of the newspaper before Roe Gardner bought it, and Roe Gardner was the editor and publisher when I worked there. And Tom and I worked on several projects together, and because he was busy writing his book, I told him about some of the things I was interested in writing, and he said, well, if you don't write it, Jeanie, who will? So I took him at his word, and I sat down and started doing the research, and there was plenty of primary and secondary information about the community.
Great. So if people want to do something like that for their own family, let's say that they've got grandparents that are, in their 70s and they want to record that oral history and get a book like that, I mean, are there services that do that? What would you recommend to them as a way to record that oral history before it goes away?
There are a lot of people who will do that for them. If they do a tape recording, it can be transcribed.
Mm-hmm.
The books that I have done on an individual basis aren't, in my estimation, too expensive to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've already written my biography, I guess because I'm planning to die anytime. Although I did say to the people at the church the other day, I'm here for the 130th. This is all the history of the church for 130 years. In 20 years, it'll be 150. At that time, I will be 93. And if you don't get it right, I'll be there to tell you. So that's kind of the way I deal with people, and especially when it comes to history, because I think each of us makes our own history, and each of us has a great contribution to make to where we live and how we live, and we should be doing that all the time.
Great. Our newsmaker interview this week has been with Jeanie Corral. Jeanie, you've said you've been in town for 53 years?
54.
54 years. And so if you want to hear some stories, call up Jeanie. Apparently she's got the same phone number for 54 years.
That's right, 674-4228.
There you go. Invite her for some lunch and hear some of the stories. Jeanie, thanks for visiting with us today.
Thank you, Dan.